Ken rode his Harley-Davidson motorcycle into his driveway and turned off the bike, rolled it onto the grass by the road, pulled a for sale sign out of his bag and a big marker and wrote his phone number on the sign and then taped the for sale sign to the bike. He looked at it, shook his head. It had been quite a day. Ken grew up on a dairy farm just outside of Delafield, Wisconsin. He liked the farm a lot. He liked it just fine, but his older brother was going to be taking over the business, so he knew that he needed to find something else to do with his life. So he found a job at the Harley-Davidson plant in Menomonee Falls, just out after graduating from high school. And that was 30 years ago. He'd worked there this whole time. And today he did something that he vowed he would never, ever do. Today he voted for job cuts and a wage freeze. Now, the company had asked for labor concessions many times before, but Ken had never voted for them. But this time was different. This time he had too much at stake. And this time the company was threatening to shut down the plant and just start another one, open a new one in Kansas City. This time he had a son, his oldest, who had just started college. That was Nick at UW-Milwaukee. And his youngest, Jenny, was 5 years away from starting college. He just couldn't lose his job right now. So he voted yes. And he was furious with the company. And he decided he wouldn't do this without a protest, a silent one, but a protest nonetheless. So he decided that from now on he would make the motorcycles, but he would never, ever ride one again. And so the for sale sign made him feel a little better, but not much. He realized that for 30 years, he saw his purpose in life as helping to make a good motorcycle. For 18 years, he also saw his purpose as being a good father and a good husband. But for 30 years, his purpose was helping to make a good motorcycle. And tomorrow, he was going to go into work an angry and disappointed man. And he was hoping that there would be some larger purpose that he could be a part of too. Well, Ken walked inside the house, sat down in front of the computer, and turned it on so that he could check the emails that had come in during the day. He opened up the inbox, and there was this list of new messages. And in that list, sure enough, was his daily email trying to convince him that climate change was real. And it was from his son, Nick, who was taking an Introduction to Environmental Science class at college. Now, Nick had always been conscientious about the environment. He encouraged the family to recycle until they were doing this as a manner of habit. And he had a give a hoot, don't pollute sticker on his door to his room that he'd had since he was 5. But of late, he'd become somewhat of a tree-hugging zealot. And it was because of a girl. There was a girl in his environmental science class that he had fallen head over heels in love with. And they'd gone out on a date. And on this date, Nick learned that this girl was going to be an intern for Greenpeace the next summer. Well, that was somewhat intimidating, and he figured that if he was going to keep her attention, he needed to step up his game a little bit. So he thought that if he could convince his blue-collar father to save the earth, that'd be his golden ticket for a second date. So he started firing these emails off to his dad day after day. And today's email read this: Dad, according to an article in the Miami Herald, an 18,000-year-old glacier in Bolivia has melted completely. It's gone. People depended on that water, that snowmelt, for their water. People all over the world depend on glaciers for their water. What happens when it's all gone? Question mark. Nick. The day before, he sent another email. Dad, for 10,000 years, the carbon level in the atmosphere has been the same, steady, 275 parts per million. Since the Industrial Revolution, that number has been climbing. Scientists have said that the top range of what's safe is 350 parts per million. Our current number for the Earth is 390 parts per million. We're too high! Exclamation point, exclamation point. Nick. The day before, he wrote an email that kind of made his father a little angry. Dad, according to the bulletin of the American Meteorological Society, there's been an increase of 20% or more of dramatic weather events, the type that dump many inches of rain in a short period of time. And then Nick wrote for emphasis, "Is the basement still wet?" Question mark. Nick. Well, each time, Ken wrote the same response back. "You'll have to do better than that, period." And then he'd hit send with a smile on his face, imagining his son getting red and looking at the screen in rage. The truth was, the basement was still wet after that 7-inch rainstorm that caused flooding in Milwaukee. And the truth also was that he really didn't know what to think about climate change. He figured it would be good for the motorcycle industry if it was happening, because people would want more fuel-efficient vehicles, but he also knew that he just didn't like reading those emails from Nick. He trusted that the statistics were correct, but he would rather pretend that it wasn't going on at all, because when he took it seriously, it made him feel kind of hopeless. Well, he shut off the computer and went over to the counter and sliced up a tomato, put it on a plate, and then sat over at the kitchen table and started going through the newspaper, the headlines for the day. Then his daughter, Jenny, came in. She was at an after-school confirmation class, and she came in the door all excited. "Dad, did you know that there are 2 creation stories in the Bible that say different things about God and the world? Did you know this?" And Ken looked down from his paper and said, "What?" He said, "There are 2 different creation stories in the Bible. Pastor Mary told us there are 2 stories. They say different." Hold on. He said, "Don't believe everything your pastor tells you. That's the rule number 1. Pastor Mary went to a very liberal seminary. No, Dad, I'll show you." And she threw the Bible on the table. "Here, chapter 1. Day 5, God creates the animals. Day 6, God creates human beings. Chapter 2, first God creates Adam, and then God creates the garden, and then God creates the animals. The order is all different." "Let me see that," Ken said, and he grabbed the Bible and he looked at it, but Jenny was just getting warmed up. "And in chapter 1, God says human beings are created in my image, and says, have dominion over the fish and the animals and the birds, and be fruitful and multiply." In chapter 2, God creates them out of the dust of the ground, out of the dirt. And God says your job is to till and keep the garden. That's different. Ken said, "I've never heard any of this before. And then, why does this matter to you?" And she said, "Okay, well, there's this boy in my science class named Ned. And he's so annoying. Okay, he sits next to me, and every time that the teacher starts talking about evolution, Ned leans over to me and says, 'You know, there's no such thing as evolution. My mom says that the Bible is God's science book, and it teaches in there clearly that God created the world in 6 days. It's a clear teaching, and that's it.